Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Fast Track Money. Today, we have a very special guest with us, Bob from Canada. Bob, you may also know him from the blog called Tawcan. Tawcan is a blog where people are talking about dividend investing, financial independence, and so on. And I just see Yasi joined us. I will first introduce this channel. So this is Fast Track Money. We are here to help you to put your life and your money situation on the fast track. You are maybe joining us on YouTube, on Facebook, or on Twitter. If you like this, please share or push the subscribe button. Thank you so much for being here. So maybe we kick it off with Bob. Bob, maybe you tell a little bit about yourself first before we dig into the technicalities and more things.
Sure. My name is Bob, or Tawcan, as many people refer me to as. I have a blog called Tawcan.com, Tawcan. Now, Tawcan is a word I invented. Basically stands for Taiwanese Canadian. I was originally from Taiwan, moved to Canada 20 something years ago. And when I started using the internet, I needed a name that I could use, like for email and stuff. And I just thought I'll put the two words together, and there you go. So on the blog, I write about financial independence, dividend investing, index ETF investing. So we're hybrid investors. We invest in both dividend paying stocks and also index ETFs. And I write a lot about financial independence. The FIRE movement, I'm part of the community. I don't write too much about early retirement because I don't focus too much on it. I'm more about the FI part of FIRE. And a little bit of everything in between. Don't also focus on money. I also write about like psychology behind money and some more behavioral stuff that we maybe don't talk too much on financial independence, retire early circle.
Oh. So, yeah, I think we cannot hear Yasi.
I can't hear Yasi right now.
Yeah, maybe she has to. Okay, maybe the other thing, so thank you so much. I think for that part, very interesting. Maybe I didn't want to go into this so early, but I also believe you come from Taiwan, you live in Canada. And for the ones who don't know, your wife is from Denmark. So it's quite an intercultural setup, right?
Yeah.
That you have and live. And for my side, it's similar the other way around. My wife is from Taiwan. I'm in Switzerland, from Switzerland. Yeah. We have a lot in Singapore as well going on. And Yasi is originally from China, but Singaporean living in Switzerland. So we have all the intercultural setup here. What do you think is most beneficial from that? What did you guys learn from each other, like from Taiwan? What did you bring and what did you learn in Canada that you didn't have before? And what did Denmark bring into this whole equation? Sorry, it's a big question, super big question.
No worries. I think it gives us more. Let me think. So it gives us more exposure to different ideas. Right. So, having been raised in Taiwan and come over here, versus my wife in Denmark, there's culturally there are some differences, the way we think and such. Right. So we kind of bring different ideas to the table. So that helps. Right. And just being more open to different ways of thinking, right? Like FI isn't your normal, or till you're 65 and wait till that, then you retire and get in trouble, right? Like, I personally immigrated from Taiwan to Canada. My wife came from Denmark, and then she met me, and then now she's staying here, right? So it's not the typical you born in a country, you live there and then grow up, right? So we have had our own struggles, and that's very relatable when it comes to fire,
And
and
now,
just being able to open to the different ideas.
and then, is there any difference that you saw between you and your wife, coming from different backgrounds, your attitude towards money that you inherited from the families?
We both came from very frugal families, so there's some commonality there. Yeah, I would say it's hard to say. I would say, yeah.
Did you notice? I mean, at the beginning when you are two together, are you both very frugal? Like you have the same mindset towards money, or did you have differences in terms of how you want to spend money, how you want to save and invest at the beginning?
Yeah. So when we first started, we were not focused too much on the money side of things. I mean, we were just spending, and we didn't have a budget, right? And that's when we started using a budget. And that's when we started being able to see what our spending trend is, and what it looks like. So it was a bit eye opener for us. Now, having said that, we both knew that we only spend what we have in the bank account, right? So we didn't get into like credit card debt. Like none of us. We always treat our credit card as a debit card, right? So only spend, say your bank has $100, you only spend $100 or less, right? So there's all that commonality between my wife and I. So we got off the track pretty quickly. Yeah.
Since you are living in Canada, and then the topic is about how to achieve financial independence in high cost living country, can you give us some numbers so we have a idea of what is the what is the cost of living in Canada? Which city are you in now?
I'm in Vancouver. So I think it's probably in the top 5 cost of living in the world, right? Vancouver, Vancouver, Toronto are typically the 2 most expensive cities, meaning from a real estate point of view, right? So, I think right now the single family detached house is, I think on average about $1 million.
How big?
Yeah, $1 million Canadian. So give or take, like
700.
roughly that.
Yeah. But how big is one single family house?
Usually about maybe 200 square feet or so. But I mean, you look at like right now in Vancouver, like $1 million, you may maybe get a shed, right? Like a garage. Apartments are like around in Vancouver, around here, apartments, like newish apartments typically go for, like, 1 bedroom, for example, go for about $900,000 now.
Wow. And
right. So it's pretty expensive. And the other thing is, unfortunately, in Canada, cell phones are not cheap, right? In Europe, it's pretty cheap. In Canada, it's easy to spend, 50 with data up to almost $100 a month.
So Europe except Switzerland.
Yeah. Switzerland is expensive. I know. I used to live in Germany for a while when I was in university. I was a co-op student in Germany for 8 months, and Germany is generally pretty cheap. I was living in Hanover, and then I went down to Lucerne and a few other Switzerland countries, and getting things like fries from, I think it's called North Sea, like a fast chain place, right? It's the same dollar amount, same like, say it's like €5 in Germany. It was like 5 Swiss franc, which was like double or something in terms of currency. Right? So it was.
I think
expensive.
Maybe €250 in Germany, then it's €5 in Switzerland, if you think like that.
Yeah, it's like basically double, which is. Yeah. Yeah. So
how would the rent be in Vancouver?
Rent. We don't rent. We own our place, but I think rent. When I was renting, my buddy and I we rented a 2-bedroom apartment. We were paying about $1,600 a month for a 2-bedroom apartment, and that was like apartment from the 50s. So yeah, I mean, I hear people renting a place for like 2,000, 2,500 a month kind of thing, even more depending on what type of places you rent.
But in general, when we talk about cost of living, people might also like naturally ask what would be the salary level, right? How would you say that like the average, let's say average cost for accommodation, like rental, how much would it consist of your overall?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not super familiar with that because I haven't put too much attention on that, but something like, I want to say it's like 30 years of your salary to buy a house in Vancouver right now. Something crazy like that.
Yeah, yeah.
For that I can add certain things. So I have studied this part. They say the average place should be the average country, or like time you have to work to buy an average house should be 7 years. So the average person's salary times 7 years without taxes or anything, give or take, should be an average apartment. And if you are like at 30, I know Hong Kong is there as well. I think Hong Kong was at 28 or something. Singapore now came down somewhat, but there are some places in the world where you really have to work very, very long to get a place to stay. And that's a very good indicator how many years.
It's
I mean,
to find 7 years now. Which city is 7 years? Leave us in the comments, guys.
Yeah, I mean, it's not as expensive as places like Hong Kong, for example, but it's getting pretty crazy here. And like, for example, a new place. Just we live in the suburb, and 3 houses down from us had a relatively new house. It's maybe like a year and a half years old, and it went for sale a few months ago. It went over by 350,000. Right.
You mean by went over? You mean from the bid price? So
asking price, asking price went over by 350,000, which is insane. Yeah.
I heard all these asking prices are not relevant anymore. If you want to have it, you have to outbid all the other takers eventually.
Yeah, that seems to be happening because the low interest rates, and people are just looking for a bigger place to live during COVID. So
yeah. That's amazing. Sometimes I understand this happening in Hong Kong or Singapore, where it's rather crowded. I do understand Vancouver is also a city, but when I think of Canada, for me, it's like so big, it's one of the biggest, largest countries in the world. You should have so much space there, right? So for me, it's hard to grasp that, why people pay so much more still.
Unfortunately, it's like Vancouver is very attractive, like Vancouver proper, and then as people start to buy and drive the house prices up, people from that used to live in Vancouver move to the suburb, right? So that kind of drive the price outward, and then it kind of amplifies that effect, because then people leave and then they go to Vancouver Island. Right, so people from Vancouver area go to Vancouver Island. Now the price in Vancouver Island is now going up, and vice versa. Right, so it's kind of like obviously things maybe don't increase as much on Vancouver Island compared to Vancouver, but you see that effect.
Maybe for that part, do you actually look at your house value? You bought your house before I continue, right? You own that. Okay. So do you look at this also as a part of building your nest egg towards fire? Do you plan to retire in Vancouver, or do you have plans to go elsewhere eventually?
We haven't really set that plan in stone yet. I mean, again, what we talked about earlier, we my wife and I were both pretty flexible, right? Before COVID, we were talking about, we could go travel for a year around the world, or because I'm from Taiwan and she's from Denmark, we were talking about living in Taiwan or Denmark for an extended period of time, maybe like a year or two, kind of geo arbitrage. Not in Denmark, I guess, because that's pretty expensive, but certainly in Taiwan. Taiwan's a lot cheaper. Whether we'll retire in Vancouver or not, that's still to be determined. We were, for a while we were like, oh, it would be kind of cool to live in Eastern Canada, like Charlottetown, like PI, Prince Edward Island, or somewhere more remote, right? Like my wife grew up on a farm in Denmark, so she likes the big land, acres of land, but here in Vancouver, that's not affordable.
But I think with land and acres, I just relate a little bit to the pictures I've seen. So you and me, we share another thing. We do like a lot of farming in our gardens, right? So that's also something how you can break a little bit like this super high, expensive cost of living. Right?
Yeah, and I think eventually, because I work in high tech, and with high tech jobs, you're kind of limited to big cities, right? Because most high tech companies are in big cities. But with remote working now, and if we do eventually retire, maybe a smaller town in Canada would be possible, right? Mm-hmm. So we're just keeping our options open. We're not saying, well, we have to live in Vancouver forever, kind of thing. We're trying to be flexible.
And on behalf of all the other audience who are also living in high cost of living countries, they are interested in the topic, right? It's achieving financial independence in high cost living countries. So my question to you is, what is your plan to achieve financial independence?
Saving a lot of money. So I think in terms of financial independence, I mean, they're at its core, it's a pretty simple concept, right? So the idea is first of all, you don't spend more than you make, increase your savings rate, and then use that delta to purchase investments, right? So investment being growing investments, right? So things like real estate, stocks, or even businesses. So typically, the easiest people do it would be stocks, right? So index funds or individual stocks, real estate like rental properties or developments. It's a little bit harder in Vancouver right now with real estate. Just even if you get a mortgage, the rent would just barely cover the mortgage typically, or mortgage payments, right? So it's not the same as in the US, where I see a lot of Americans, they're in their 20s or 30s and they have like 10 properties and generating a lot of passive income that way. Whereas in Vancouver or in Toronto, you can still do it, but you don't get as much, in my opinion, from what I've seen. I think there's like a 1% or 10% rule with real estate, where you only get, I don't even know, because I'm not into real estate investing, but there's a rule, and in Vancouver that just doesn't compute, right?
Yeah. And so you talk about to save and to invest. Is there any advantage that living and working in Vancouver to, like, say, fast track your journey to achieving financial independence, or you think it's much more difficult in Vancouver than in low cost of living countries?
Right. So before I get into that question, I forgot to continue on to my topic. So there's like saving. The savings rate is very important, right? The idea is to increase that gap between how much you earn and how much you spend, and save the difference, right? But there are two ways you could think about it. Like the first thing people, when they start the FIRE movement, is usually, I'm going to cut all my expenses, right? So you cut like groceries and stuff, things like that, all the extra stuff. And then some people get into the extreme frugality, where they're eating like ramen noodles or instant noodles and getting really, really cheap. I mean, that works for some people, but for the most part, in my opinion, it doesn't work for, it's not a long-term solution, right? You start depriving yourself, you're not enjoying your life, right? So I think that's not a long-term solution. Now, the other way to look at it is you could increase your income, right? You get a better job, ask for a raise, or you can start a side hustle. Now, the income side, I would say there's not as big of a ceiling compared to the expenses, right? With expenses, you can only cut so much before you start suffering, depriving yourself. Whereas income, I think there's almost, I wouldn't say unlimited potentials, but you could certainly earn a lot more than you could do today.
There's no cap.
Yeah, no cap. And then to answer Yassi's question, now in terms of high tech, I would say Vancouver isn't the best place in terms of salary versus places like Seattle or the Silicon Valley, right? If I were to move down to Silicon Valley, I could probably make easily 20-30% more, if not higher, right? But it's also a choice you have to make, right? Is it do you like the lifestyle in Vancouver, or do you like the lifestyle in Silicon Valley and living in the States versus in Canada, right? A good friend of mine went down to Silicon Valley because of job, and we're both outdoorsy people, and he said it was hard for them because it was very city, not a lot of green spaces, and then in terms of outdoor, like here in Vancouver, Squamish is an hour away, right? Yes, Whistler is an hour and a half, an hour and a half. It's easy to get to the outdoor, whereas in Southern California, Silicon Valley, it's harder to get out to the nature. And then he was riding bikes to work, and he was biking to work, and there was no infrastructure for bike lanes or anything. It was you drive everywhere, right? And I've been down to Silicon Valley. I'm not bad mouthing Silicon Valley, but for me, it's not for me because I've been down there a lot due to work. And one time we got stuck in traffic for like half an hour, and we were trying to go for like a mile or 2 miles. It was insane. It was just so much traffic, right? So you kind of have to ask yourself, is it better to move somewhere to earn better income for a short period of time while the lifestyle may not suit you, or is it better to live at a place, maybe don't earn as much? So it's kind of a personal decision, right? And also, when it comes to jobs, if you switch jobs, if you jump from company to company, typically that brings you a higher earning power overall. But again, you kind of have to ask yourself, is that worth it? Is it, so there are all different questions you have to answer, right?
Good. Yeah, I think this is especially interesting if you live somewhere close to a border. How close is Vancouver from the border?
Vancouver is probably about 40 minutes. Vancouver proper is probably 40 minutes from the U.S. border. Now, we live basically right on the border.
Okay.
So
do you go shopping on the other side? Are there
so before the land border was closed, I definitely go over to the U.S. because gas is a lot cheaper in U.S. It's about, right at the border is usually about 10-15 cents cheaper. So it's maybe like 10% to 20% cheaper.
Okay.
Right. So for me, it's border is maybe 10-minute drive away from home. And I have a Nexus pass, which gets me through the border quicker. So security clearance stuff. So I could do that trip in maybe, fill up the gas, buy a few things, maybe in less than 30 minutes. Right. So it was worth it. Right. It would go down for gas every 2 weeks. Each trip I probably save about $20 to $30. Now, if I were to get like, milk or eggs or some other products, it would be cheaper. I know some Canadians go like live around the area. They go down to the US, go to Costco, and buy a bunch of stuff, and that typically is cheaper. You obviously have to go a little bit longer distance than right at the border, but that's another way to save your cost of living a little bit.
Geo arbitrage, yeah.
in that way, yeah.
Talking about geo arbitrage, I know why Matthias is asking this question, because you're doing exactly the same.
Yes. Well, we have been doing crazy things in terms of geo arbitrage, and we are still doing that, right? So back in Singapore, diapers were cheaper in Taiwan. I was heavily loaded with diapers while flying back and forward. I was smuggling milk powder in and out. I was doing a lot of crazy stuff there. In Switzerland, we have a house close to the border to France and Germany. So we have like Bob, it's like 10, 15 minutes. I'm in France or in Germany. And here France has very good seafood, very fresh selection, whereby Germany has good beer and other things. So each place has its advantages, and it's very cool if you live in a place where you can cherry pick a little bit from the best from each side, so to say.
Yeah, I know the Norwegians go to Denmark for beer, and then Danish people go to Germany for beer because it's cheaper there. So it's kind of, happens in every single country.
My husband and I even did a day trip. We drove to Matthias' place, and he took us to France shopping few places and Germany shopping few places and coming back to Switzerland. Yeah. That was crazy, like one day, 3 countries.
One morning, one early afternoon, right?
Yeah.
Right. And similarly, we, at the border, U.S. border, there's these mailboxes, so you could buy stuff from Amazon, get it shipped there, because to ship from, if you buy from U.S. and to ship to Canada, there's like duties, import taxes and stuff. And shipment is usually not as cheap. So before the land border closed, ship there and then go over there and pay $3 a package and get stuff back. And usually when you cross the border, they ask you where you bring back, and if it's like $100, $200 or less, they don't really care, because for them it's to do the paperwork and charge you duty is more work for them. So they usually just weigh you through.
Bob, may I ask, do you have people also living in the US and commuting to Vancouver to work there?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So my work is an international company, and we have a few folks, executives and things like that. They our previous CEO used to live in I think he lived in right at the border, and right now a few previous executives live in Bellingham, kind of 30 minutes, 40 minutes from the border, and then they would commute to where I work, which is, for them, is probably like an hour and a half commute each day. It's a little bit long, but for them, they were saying, they could spend like $2 million getting a tiny house, or they could spend $2 million getting a castle in Washington State. So they choose the latter one.
That's cool. Maybe one more question is so I have been following your blog also for a couple of years. I really like how you cover dividend investings and so on, and how you cover this psychological part as well. Financial independence is not just about money. I also like to think of it like that. Maybe a question from my side also is, what is next for you? What is your pressure point at the moment, and where to?
Yeah, when I started blog, I was anonymous, and then I kind of reveal myself later on, because most of my friends knew who Tawcan is, so it wasn't like a big secret identities, and so I just reveal my real name and my face, and then we kind of tentatively said that we wanted to become financially independent by 2025. Now, we're kind of in a different situation than most people, and we're very fortunate, and we're feel very blessed. In the such way that we're technically we are financially independent if we wanted to, but we decide to sort of prolong our financial independent journey by investing in dividend stocks or passive income generating assets, right? So the idea is, because we don't really want to touch our principal, with the idea that maybe it's an Asian culture thinking, is that eventually we want to pass our portfolio assets to our kids and grandkids and so on and so on, right? So the idea of getting dividends or distributions from ETFs and not touching the principal is kind of appealing to us, and it for me it also seemed a little bit safer. Like, imagine we were living off our investment last February, and then all of a sudden, the market crashed February in March, and we had to take out 4% from our portfolio. Well, if our portfolio was $1 million and all of a sudden went down to, I don't know, 500,000, obviously, if we withdraw any money, that would hit pretty hard on our portfolio, right? So having that dividend income, so we don't have to touch the principal, makes sense to us. And actually, in fact, I don't know if you know, but Chrissy and Bryce at
Dividend Shield.
Dividend Shield. That's what they talk about, right? So a similar idea as them, right? They're index investors, but they did create this Dividend Shield in the first, I think, 10 or 15 years of their retirement. They want to rely more on the Dividend Shield as a more safer way to get income to sustain their expenses. So that's kind of what we are planning. Right. So even though we say, well, we want to get to financial independence by 2025, meaning our dividend income or distribution income equals or exceeds our living expenses, we're not very firm on the date. We know we'll get there. Right. Like right now, if I do calculation, we're good when we're 65, and I guess that's coast fi or slow fi. Some people define it. So if we hit FI by 2025, awesome. If we hit it earlier, awesome. If we hit it later, a few years, that's fine too. So we're not in a rush, right? So we're kind of, and that's why I think having a plan is great, but don't get too set on your plan. Sort of be a little bit, again, flexibility is very important, right? Being able to adapt to your plans and change your plans according to what's happening, I think it's very important.
Yeah, and when we in different stage in our lives, we also think differently.
For sure.
So audience, sorry we have been ignoring you guys. If you have any questions, please leave in the comment section. We are all looking at the comments and questions. Have any questions to Bob, to Matthias, or to myself? If you are watching this replay, you can also leave comments, especially on YouTube, that I will always reply you. And if you are watching it from Matthias' Facebook, Financial Imagineer, he would also be very responsive and help you to answer any questions. And Bob, maybe you can share with us your blog, website, or your social media handle that if people want to learn more about, this topic and learn from your personal experience, where they can find you.
Right. So you can find me on my blog. It's called Tawcan.com, Tawcan. Stands for Taiwanese Canadian. Now I realize Taiwan is spelled Taiwan. I think I might have, although if I just change it to Taican, that's not very unique. So I think I just did a misspelling there to make it more unique. Plus Tawcan, some people can't really pronounce it, so it's kind of cool that way. So yeah, you can find me on my blog, Tawcan.com. I'm pretty active on Twitter, so that's @Tawcan. And then on I got an Instagram, but that's more personal pictures. And then on Facebook I think I got a Facebook group. If you search for Tawcan, you'll find it. But yeah, it's just, you'll find me if you search for Tawcan. That's what I use on social media.
Great. Thank you so much for being here. I hope the audience find it interesting hearing from your side out there in the North America, in Canada, and we have audience coming from all around the world. So if you guys find it something interesting in your country, please also make it leave in the comments. What is the housing price? How do you see if you can achieve financial independence in your country or in another country? Thank you so much for being here with us. If you want to learn more about financial independence and learn more about money habits, money mindset, please follow Matthias, Financial Imagineer or Fast Track. That we have all the links in the show notes below. And look out for our Fast Track Money course. We have already run 3 batches, and we are going to launch an online course pretty soon. And subscribe the newsletter on fasttrack.live, and you will hear about the news firsthand once we launch it. Thank you guys so much.
Thanks
for having me.
Pleasure.